If you're not sure of how to begin your renovation, go to Home Trust. Home Trust is Singapore's leading renovation platform that matches homeowners with trusted interior designers. On the main page, simply click the Get Recommendations feature and answer a few simple questions to get matched with reputable IDs. From there, you can check out their portfolios and take a look at their reviews. Did you know that Home Trust do not delete negative reviews? This is where Home Trust stands out, by providing the promise of trust and transparency to homeowners like ourselves. If you want to know more, make sure you visit their website at hometrust.sg.
Hi everyone, welcome to my house. So this is a 3-room BTO located in the Whampoa area. The house is designed and renovated without any ID or project manager. So I remember it has been 5.5 years since the initial balloting exercise, and while waiting for key collection, we spent some time deciding on what we wanted for each and every corner of the house before settling on the eventual design. And so for today, I'll be showing you our living room. We hope you will like it. Otherwise, please come in.
Once you enter the door, you'll be greeted by our shoe rack. This is a 10-layer one, which is actually very cheap, only $14 with free shipping. I think this is a really good idea to make use of this space. Nowadays, as houses are getting smaller and smaller, we as homeowners have also become smarter when it comes to space utilization. Although I would say that the quality is a little bit flimsy, it will wobble if you shake it a little bit. It works perfectly fine in this particular corner. Now from inside the house, the shoe rack is actually very discreet. You can just see a little bit of the side profile from this side because we have a door blocking over here. Now for those of you who are going to close your main door at all times, you will not see the shoe rack at all. So for ourselves, we use it to store some of the shoes that we wear very commonly, such as the work shoe that I wear to work every day. Now as for the shoes that we don't usually wear, we are putting it behind the bomb shelter door on a rack that looks like this. So the amount of additional storage this thing can provide is actually very impressive. You see we have so many shoes at the top and bottom, but there's still plenty of space left. This is also not very expensive, only $20 to $30 from Shopee. And because of these two racks, right, we are creating additional storage from spaces that are not normally utilized. And because of this, we actually do not need to buy an additional shoe cabinet anymore. Now when it comes to the bomb shelter, I see a lot of homeowners building carpentry to conceal the bomb shelter door. For us, our entrance was already very narrow, and we didn't like the idea of making it even smaller. If you think about it, this width is only around 10 centimeters. Having such a slim layer of carpentry is not going to create any functional storage. So what we did here is to buy some vinyl wrap from taobao to wrap up the bomb shelter door and also the door frame. Now this is also the same color as our room doors, which you will see next time. And honestly, I think it looks quite decent, isn't it? So the strategy here is that for the things that we cannot hide, we are making it more obvious. We're making it look intentional. But then again, is there really a need to conceal the bomb shelter door? Now let's move on to the other side. So this is the DB area, and after key collection, the first thing that I did was to check if all the surfaces over here are flat. So what I did back then was to buy fluted panels from taobao and simply paste it over the original DV doors. Now when it comes to fluted panels, many people will usually say, oh, it's difficult to clean, the dust and dirt will trap inside all these inner corners and it can be difficult to maintain. Now that was actually not true for us. We have been staying over here for close to 6 months and we only wipe it about 2 to 3 times. And especially for the higher areas, we didn't wipe it at all because we just couldn't reach. And after the time has passed, right, we actually realized that the dirt and dust was actually quite manageable, not much at all. So before key collection, I was also quite fearful of this maintenance issue. And back then, what I did was to purchase one of these or many of these fluted panel samples and paste it on the wall of our parents' place. So we left it over there for 1 full year without cleaning just to see how much dirt is going to trap in between, right? And after 1 year, I was actually quite surprised to see that actually the amount of dirt over here trapped inside is the same as any normal wall that you see in your houses. So that is actually quite good for us and it gives us the green light to purchase and install all these fluted panels over here. Now there's one very important caveat I need to point out. For fluted panels, do not let them touch the floor. You can see over here that we have suspended our fluted panels such that any dirt and dust can fall through these gaps and touch the floor, so that one sweep and everything will be gone. Now for those of you who install your fluted panels all the way down to the floor, you'll find that over time, dust and dirt can get trapped in between all these gaps and it becomes very difficult to clean on a regular basis. Even your robot vacuum also cannot reach. Now let's take a look at inside the DB area. You'll see that everything here is pretty much in the original state. All I did here was to purchase all these adjustable shelves from taobao to put the smaller items. Back then, I went to measure all the internal dimensions as accurately as possible and sent it to the taobao carpenters to fabricate all these planks to slot in. When they arrived, I purchased all these support stickers that you can see at the corners here and slot the shelves in. And just like that, everything costs less than $30 and the DB area is settled already. You'll also realize that for the entire house, we actually didn't do anything complex and fanciful. We just kept the design flexible and simple, which I think a lot of homeowners can consider without breaking the bank, even if you do not do DIY. Now in the original HDB design, this area was awkwardly empty. So what I did here was to measure dimensions and purchase custom cabinets from taobao. You can see that all these shelves are actually height adjustable and they extend all the way up towards the ceiling. After that, I concealed the doors using fluted panels that extends all the way to this edge over here. Now, as you enter the house, you realize that we actually do not have a TV inside the living room, and that is actually one of the more uncommon renovation decisions. For most of the BTOs, you will see that one side will be sofa and one side will be the TV console. And this is actually very practical for us because both Lady Boss and myself do not watch TV. In our parents' place, we will just go to the computer for entertainment instead. Now this kind of layout that you see over here with sofa on both sides is only achievable if you forgo the TV console. Otherwise, there's not going to be space anymore. So for those of you who do not intend to watch TV, this is something that you may want to consider. Now over here on the bomb shelter side is where we place our TV console. Just that in case in future when we do buy a TV, can just put it on top. But otherwise, we'll just buy a small projector to cast on this wall. Now back then when I was looking for a TV console from taobao, I was scrolling and I just could not find one that is flat on one side and round on the other side. All the listings were either flat on both sides or round on both sides. So what I did over here was to buy a console that is slightly longer than the width of the wall, and I took a circular saw to cut away the left side to flush it against the wall. Now if I go closer, you can see that I have already cut the maximum amount before reaching this drawer. Now after this installation, if I go back, there's actually some protrusion here on the right side. So what I did over here was to measure and customize a black color plank from taobao to fit it in this side. So if you look closely, right, the grain lines are actually different. But from far, you really will not notice it. After installation, I added a LED strip underneath to give it a floating effect. Now unfortunately, I do not have the footage of myself doing all this because it was quite tiring to DIY and film at the same time. Otherwise, this may be quite interesting. For this console, I paid a total of $140 before shipping. We have drawers on the left and the right side, and the center compartment is a tic-tac mechanism. Now for those of you who watched my previous videos, I also use this area for filming. So over here I have a battery operated light that I use to light up my face. Now in the original HDB design, there's a recess behind this wall. This is only about 7 to 8 centimeters, which is not very functional for storage. So what I did was to hire a partition worker to flush this entire wall flat. So you can see that over here is a real wall and over here is a partition wall. And after that is done, I use Limewash Paint to cover the entire wall. When it comes to Limewash painting, I find that the real purpose here is to create visual texture instead of having just a flat color wall. You see, 20-30 years ago when the concept of textured painting was first introduced, the brushworks were very aggressive. Back then, it wasn't even called Limewash Paint. Some call it just crisscross pattern painting. I find that it actually made the space look very messy. It was only 5 years ago where Limewash really got trendy and the brushstrokes become more subtle. So the tip here is to aim for visual texture and not visual clutter, especially for those of you who are going to do it yourself, which I highly recommend. How aggressive you want your Limewash to be is up to personal preference, but also do not overdo it such that the wall becomes a single color and you cannot even see any texture anymore.
Even for ourselves, I find that my painting skills is also not perfect. There are some areas that I wish that I have blended a bit more. There are some areas that I feel is not that well done, but overall I think it is quite acceptable. So you can also check out our previous video on how we did our Limewash painting.
Now if you lower your eyes downward, you can see that our flooring blends in quite well with the Limewash wall. And this is also the one item that I have the most people asking me for. Even our friends who came over, because it looks like micro cement at a much lower cost. So when you're selecting your flooring, be it vinyl or tiles, try to choose those with minimal patterns.
If you look at the selection out in the market, there are marble designs for tiles and the wood grain designs for vinyl. So this kind of harsh grain patterns can create a lot of visual clutter. I will also put up a video of our original HDB default kitchen wall because that's just the best example. It comes with these super harsh grain patterns that's very distracting to look at. And these days, our houses are already so small, and having a lot of patterns will just make the house look even smaller. This also applies to the herringbone floor designs, where the objective is to show off the diagonal lines. I find that for this kind of flooring, it can work out very nicely for bigger spaces like offices or commercial areas, but for HDB houses like ours, it is only worth considering if you are going to have a big open area, so that the herringbone design can stand out. I also see some homeowners doing herringbone designs for their bedroom and then place a king-size bed on top to cover everything, so that's a little bit pointless. So for smaller houses like ours, it is still best to go for simpler designs so that when you come home, the floor and the walls can disappear into the furniture. So again, the key here is to aim for visual texture and not visual clutter. Also, regardless of whether you choose vinyl or tiles, make sure that you ask your seller to see the completed project photos, because you will not be able to tell the floor pattern just by looking at one single tile. I've heard a lot of stories where decisions were made after seeing just one single plank, and then after installation, everything looks completely different. Additionally, we also opted out of skirting so that the wall and the floor can blend in together. The main reason why skirting is required is so that your mop will not bang into the walls and chip off the paint. But nowadays, with advanced robot vacuum technology, the mop pads can extend to the edges without crashing into the walls. In worst case scenario, skirting can also be added on later. But so far, it has been more than 6 months for our walls without any issues, and we are quite happy with it so far. For us, the key reason why we went for vinyl and specifically for this design is to avoid the grout lines, as they may require scrubbing every few months. Now, I also want to point out a caveat here that vinyl is not a foolproof material. You will definitely need to accept seeing scratches here and there over time, and some homeowners actually regret their vinyl purchase because of this. So if durability is your concern, then definitely look no further, just go for tiles. For our case, we are happy to live with this just to have no grout lines. I will also leave the contact information of my vinyl vendor. They are also giving a 5% discount if you just show my video. Now, another design that has caught a lot of attention is our Cove light without false ceiling. In front of the camera, it looks like false ceiling, but I also have friends coming over to the house in real life and still think that this is false ceiling and just cannot understand how. So back then, what I did was to purchase 20 meters of this metal cornice from taobao. So this side you will screw onto the ceiling and this side will screw into the wall. After that, you plaster everything flat and paint over so that it blends into the walls. The entire process took me 1 week to do, and this is the end result. The whole point of doing this is to achieve the aesthetic of cove lighting without lowering the height of the house. Also, since there's no horizontal ledge on the structure, dust will not accumulate. For those of you who've seen my previous video, I have filmed the entire process over there, and after that video was released, I also heard a few homeowners who sent that video to their contractors to do this. How do I know? It was because the contractors asked me if they can come over to my house to see how it is done. So if you are interested, you can check out that video.
The only point to take note here is that you will need to plan out where to hide your LED driver and plan the electrical wiring for this beforehand. For us, we place it behind the curtain at this corner. This position is also easily accessible for maintenance in future. Something extra that I did was to buy a pasta noodle container. I poked some holes in here for ventilation and cover the LED driver. In the event that the LED driver somehow explodes or catches fire, which is very extremely rare, the curtains will still be protected from it. Now let's talk about the curtains I purchased from Taobao. I really wanted to create this clean looking ripple fold effect from the floor to ceiling. Some will call this the S4 curtain, or the Chinese will call it snake fold curtains, 蛇形帘. For many BTOs, the windows comes with this ledge that makes it very tempting for you to mount your curtain, which I do not recommend. By mounting your curtain on the ceiling, it creates these long clean lines that makes the house look taller. The only downside is the wastage of floor space over here, which is actually not too bad because most of the time the curtains will be open anyway. So what I did here was to measure the floor to ceiling, the wall to wall dimensions, and send it over to the Taobao seller for fabrication. After the items arrive, I install everything myself. The curtain track is also motorized, so we catered an additional electrical socket for this beforehand. For those of you who are familiar with smart home, this motor also communicates through the Zigbee protocol. As for price-wise, I paid $450 for 3 sets of curtains, which include both the motorized track, the smart motor, and also the curtains itself. I also have 2 other sets of curtains in the 2 other bedrooms, which I will show you in future videos. But everything adds up to be $450. Now, if I were to go behind the curtains, you will notice that there's a strange looking structure over here. This is actually a projector stand. I spent a few dollars to buy a set of short drawers to build this mechanism. Because our house has no TV, so when the time comes, we will buy a small projector, put it on this stand, and then cast the screen onto this particular wall above the console. We have also catered an electrical socket behind for this. As you can see, the whole idea here is to hide the projector behind the curtains when not in use and pull it out whenever required. Now, when it comes to the sofa selection, it is actually very easy to mess up the size. I'm sure for those of you watching, you remember that in our parents' generation, we will just go to the shopping center, see that everything looks nice, very comfortable, and then you just buy it and bring it home. And then all of a sudden, it looks too big for the house. So for those of you who are looking for a sofa, I suggest to decide where you want to position your sofa first, decide on the dimensions, then go down to the shopping center and measure before buying. Especially when it comes to small spaces, the dimensions has to be just right for everything to be proportionate. For us, this is a customized piece from Taobao, 2 meters in length, 1 meters in depth, and we also catered sockets on both sides of the sofa. The good thing about this sofa is the removable backrest. If you take away everything, it turns into a single bed. Very good for sleeping. Lady Boss has been using it for afternoon naps. For myself, whenever I fall sick, coughing heavily, this becomes my bed, and we call it the husband's sick bay. Price-wise, we paid $450 for the sofa, and overall I would say that this is more of an aesthetic choice instead of comfort. I find that the really comfortable sofas in the market are usually very big and bulky because they come with high back support. Now for a low-profile sofa like ours, it exposes more of the Limewash walls behind it to make the living room look taller. For all these small cushions that you see on top of the sofa, the purpose is to add a touch of texture to the look. I remember taking a few days scrolling through Taobao from different shops trying to visualize how everything will come together, and I think the end results looks not bad. And in the end, the effort, I think it was quite worth it. Now on the left side, we just pair it with a single seater, also from Taobao. Now here's a quick tip when it comes to aesthetics. If you look at this corner, there's already fabric and wood elements from the sofa and the walls. What is missing here is metal and leather. So I bought a metal side table from Taobao and it looks quite nice already. And then if I put another leather tissue box over here, all of a sudden, the space looks a little bit more atas, isn't it? At night, when we turn on the spotlight and cast it downwards, it becomes even more dramatic. When you have different textures coming together, it becomes visually interesting. The same concept also applies to this side. If you look at this space, there's already a lot of fabric textures from the sofa and curtains. There is the stone-like texture from the Limewash wall. And then there's also a touch of leather from that one cushion in front. Now, notice how it looks if I add in another metal element. And lastly, the round lamp over here becomes a finishing touch. In fact, I would say that this side is even more appropriate because not only we have different textures, we also have the different shapes. You can see a lot of squares and rectangles from the sofa and cushions. You can see the long lines from the curtain. And then we also have triangles from the side table, and you even have circles from the lamp. Now if you put them all together, suddenly you will realize that everything looks very cohesive and visually elevated. Even with many different items, they all look intentional as long as the colors stay the same. So this can apply to all parts of your house. The strategy here is to go for more shapes and textures while maintaining the same color coordination. Now, can you guess how much I paid for this carpet? I tell you, you won't believe it. This is only $20. Unbelievable, right? Now, I remember very initially when I asked Lady Boss, hey, let's have a carpet. She violently objected. She said carpet is very hard to maintain now, it'll be very difficult to vacuum. Every 6 months you need to send for cleaning. Do you know how expensive it is to send for cleaning? So when I told Lady Boss about the price, $20, then she said, oh, I like carpet. I think it's a great idea. It looks very nice. You step on it, it feels like a hotel. So if y'all don't mind, I feel that carpet is a great way to soften the look of the house and tie everything together. Go for those low power carpets and not the thick furry ones because those are very difficult to clean. Now for those of you who have a robot vacuum in the house, then even better because you can vacuum it regularly. And when it's time to send for cleaning, right, no need to clean, just buy a new one. It's only $20, right? And surprisingly, the quality here is very impressive. If I pour water on it, the droplets actually float on the surface and doesn't get absorbed into the fabric. So it doesn't stain easily. So for the price, right, really no complaints over here. Now, the most expensive furniture in the entire living room is actually above me. Now, I find that ceiling fans are very important when it comes to aesthetics. Although I don't like the price of this item, but it has been serving us very well so far, so really no regrets on this purchase. Now when it comes to the wall panels, the plan is to use all these subtle vertical lines to make the entire house look a little bit taller. Now if I were to go closer, you can see that I finished all the edges with this kind of metal trims. I'm not sure what is the name of this metal trim, but can you see that everything is recessed inside by 90 degrees and it creates all these very clean lines. In Chinese, this is called 海棠角. And I feel that this is the small details that actually matter and it can change the look and feel of the entire house. Now, if you were to look a little bit higher, right, you can see that there's actually some of these horizontal lines that is not so nice. And that just reminds me that when it comes to home renovation or DIY, not everything can be perfect. Accidents are bound to happen. When I purchased these panels from taobao, it just didn't occur to me that the panels cannot fit into the lift. So when they arrived, our freight forwarder had no choice but to leave them downstairs. I was panicking and I was desperate because there's just no chance that I can carry 200 kg of wall panels up the staircase to such a high floor. At the same time, we cannot even just throw them away because these kind of bulky items will require proper disposal service. In the end, I had to use a penknife and ruler to cut the panels one by one and then carry them up using the lift one at a time. Total, it took me 3 hours just to cut and carry them up. And along the way, I also made a few bumps on the sides and corners, and that is why you see these ugly lines over here. Every time we have visitors, I will use it to tell my friends this story. But honestly, if I were to do it again, I may just hire someone to do it instead. Now back then while designing the house, I really wanted to place a nice wall art here on this wall and also cast a nice spotlight down shining on the drawing. Now as for the drawing itself, right, there's actually no meaning to it. It's just there to make the house look a little bit more atas. Now I also remember that back then, I spent many days just trying to figure out what kind of design and colors is going to match the aesthetic of the house because it was just so difficult to visualize it based on looking at the listing alone. Now this kind of big drawings, right, is going to create a lot of presence in the house and we really wanted to get it right. because every time we go home, this will be the focal point for us to look at. In the end, we are also very happy with the way it turned out, and we are also quite surprised that when some of our friends see it, right, they thought the drawing is very expensive, but actually, right, this drawing is not very expensive at all. Lastly, I want to talk about lighting. Lighting is so important when it comes to home renovation. And throughout this video, I have also included day and night footages. You can see that in the day, the living room looks very formal and very masculine. At night, the light really softens down the house to make it more cozy. Now, I remember in our parents' generation, it is very common to see one big light at the center of the ceiling, and that's all for the entire living room. Unfortunately, that is also one of the worst things to do because it creates a lot of harsh shadows. For the lights that we use, the hardware itself is actually not very expensive. But to plan out what kind of lights to use and where to position them, it requires a lot of profound knowledge. If you look at some of the local shops that we have here in Singapore, you will see a select few shops charging way higher prices than the majority. And the reason is because they include the design service. Now, where to position your lights is equally as important as the type of lights that you buy. This expertise is not something that an average homeowner will have. Now let me show you an example here. This clip is taken in the day, and imagine every day you go home, walk through the main door, the eyes will naturally be drawn to the window and the view outside, because that is the only source of light. And here's how it looks like at night. So same thing, imagine coming back home after work. What is the first thing you'll look at? It is no longer the window, it is actually all the furniture, especially the wall art because there is a spotlight over there. For houses with that one big white color light at the center of the living room, I find that no matter how well the renovation is done, it is going to flatten the entire aesthetic of the house. Because there's no longer any contrast, the eyes just don't know where to look at. But also on the flip side, lighting can also be the cheapest way to make a house look a lot nicer. I will not go into too much detail over here because that would take too long to explain and it will require a dedicated video. And folks, that is all for the living room. I hope you like it and learned something new today. When it comes to the living room, it is a place that creates the first impression for your friends. It is a space you step into every time you come home after work. And it also sets the mood for the rest of the evening. And therefore, aesthetics here are actually quite important. Sure, having a nice window view will help, but I find that keeping things simple and clutter-free is the way to go. Also, I know that many of you will be curious about our renovation costs, but not to worry, I'll be doing a renovation cost breakdown video for the entire house in future. Like many of you, Lady Boss and myself are also first-time homeowners, first time doing renovation, so we can definitely relate to how it is like to have little money to spend and also feel the pinch when it comes to finances. Therefore, it is also my intention to provide full transparency towards pricing, so please be patient. For now, what I can say is that this is going to be a low-cost renovation. Now, if you have watched till the end, thank you so much for your attention. Actually, these kind of home tour videos are not very easy to do at all, so I hope that you can just help me to press the like button. And in the next video, we will show you our kitchen. The kitchen will be very different because it is no longer just about aesthetics, it is also about functionality. By the way, we are currently still using the traditional key lock. I just haven't had the time to research and understand what is good out there in the market for digital locks. Can any one of you recommend some reliable models to me? I'm just curious to hear more opinions before buying. I just need a gate lock, no need the door lock because that will mean having one more item that will spoil in future and also double the chance of locking myself out of the house if the battery runs out. And I don't have anything expensive in the house anyway, so I don't need all the fancy face recognition, mobile app, remote unlock, that kind of function. I just need a very reliable fingerprint one will do. So hopefully it is also not too expensive and doesn't lock me out of the house. So please leave your recommendations in the comments down below and we shall see you in the next video. Bye bye!